All right, the first three questions have to do with proportions. They don't have to do with area formulas. Okay, so number one, Bobby has a toy car that is 7.5 centimeters long. There are about 2.5 centimeters in 1 inch. How long is Bobby's toy car in inches? So we're going to set up a proportion and we're going to label it with the units. Okay, so here's my units, centimeters and inches. So centimeters and inches. So it's about 2.5 centimeters for 1 inch. And then I'm going to fill in the other information. So the other information I have is that it's 7.5 centimeters long. So where I have centimeters, I'm going to put my 7.5. My question is, how long is the car in inches? So for inches, that's where I'm going to place my X. So I've set up my proportion with my units, my ratio. Now I'm going to cross multiply. So I have 2.5x. So 2.5x is equal to 1 times 7.5. All right, and 1 times 7.5 is that's just 7.5. So I have 2.5x is equal to 7.5. And then to solve, I'm going to divide by 2.5. Okay, so this divides away. So I solve this division problem, and that's going to give me my answer. Now, a resource that you have when you take a math test is graph paper. All right, and we can use graph paper to help us divide with decimals. All right, so we have 7.5 divided by 2.5. The number on top goes in the box, okay? 7.5 divided by 2.5. So I can't divide by a decimal. So I have to move my decimal over 1 time. So in math, if I make one change, I've always got to make another change. So I got to move this decimal over 1 time. All right, and then I encourage you to rewrite it because this just looks like a mess. So now what I have is the whole number 25 being divided into the whole number 75. That's way easier than 2.5 into 7.5. Now we just have whole numbers. 25 goes into 75 3 times, like 3/4. Okay, so my answer choice over here, okay, your answer is C. Draw 2 arrows pointing to the answer C. Number 2. 1 meter is about 3.5 feet. Which measurement is closest to the number of meters for 13.2 feet? Okay, so here's my units, meters and feet. So 1 meter is about 3.3 feet. The other number I have is this 13.2 feet. So feet, I'm going to put the 13.2. Okay, so I want to know the meters. I'm solving for the meters, so that's going to be my X on top. All right, so I'm going to multiply 3.3 times X, and that's going to be equal to 1 times 13.2. All right, well, 1 times 13.2 is just 13.2. All right, then to solve this equation, I'm going to divide both sides by the 3.3. This divides away. I'm going to use my graph paper to make this easier for myself. So I have the 13.2 divided by the 3.3. I can't divide with these decimals though. I've got to get rid of this decimal. So I move that decimal to behind the 3, and I move this decimal to behind the 2. Okay, rewrite this. This is the whole number 33 divided into 132. Okay, now I'm just dividing by whole numbers. I don't really know how many times 33 goes into 132 though, so I can use my answer choices. All right, I've got 1.5 or 1.1 times. Well, that's not going to be enough. 3. Well, 33 times 3 is 99, so I think it needs to be bigger than 3. 4 sounds pretty good. So let's see what 33 times 4 is. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12 plus 1 is 132. So this is going to go in there 4 times. So my answer is going to be B. Look and make sure that this makes sense. Okay, if it's 1 over 3.3, does putting a 4 here make sense? 4 over 13.2. That looks about right, so that makes sense. I've got my ratio set up, got my proportion set up. All right, number 3. 1 kilogram is about 2.2 pounds. Which measurement is closest to the number of kilograms for 15.4 pounds? All right, here's my units: kilogram, pounds. Kilogram, pounds. 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. All right, I'm going to fill in another number. The next number is the 15.4 pounds. So that's going to go right here, 15.4. I'm trying to find out the number of kilograms, so that's my x. All right. So I cross multiply. 2.2x is equal to 1 times 15.4. That's just 15.4. Okay, then I'm going to divide by 2.2. This divides away. So all I have to do is divide this number to get my answer. So I have 15.4 divided by 2.2. I've got to move my decimal over. So I've got to move my decimal over. Okay, so this is going to give me the whole number 22 divided into 154. Okay, I don't really know how many times 22 goes into 154, so I'm going to use my answer choices. Okay, so I have 7, 3, 1, 5. Well, 1 isn't going to make any sense because when this is 1, it's 2.5, and I'm jumping up, well, really about 5 times as much, okay? So I'm going to say 5 is a pretty good guess. So let's see what 22 times 5 is. So 22 times 5, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11. Well, that's not quite enough. So let's try 7. So 22 times 7, 2 times 7 is 14, 2 times 7 is 14 plus 1 is 15, 154. So 22 is going to go in there 7 times, so my answer is 7 pounds. So part of this is setting up a ratio and using a proportion to solve.